Hey everybody, it's your favorite red bearded attorney here, Derek Christensen, owner of Legion Law. We do estate planning and probate in Dallas, Texas. So, that being said, today I wanted to talk to you today about revocable trusts versus irrevocable trusts. Now, technically the difference between the two is just the IR at the beginning of irrevocable versus revocable, but there are dramatic differences between the two that you should understand so that you make sure you make the correct decision when creating a trust. So before I dive into that, I wanted to let you guys know how to contact me. You can reach out to me on my website, legionlawpllc.com, or you can email me directly, Derek, D-E-R-E-K, at legionlawpllc.com. So with that, let's just dive right in. Trusts are a topic in and of itself. I could spend hours on it, but essentially, I'm going to define a trust, and then I'm going to go into the difference between revocable and irrevocable. So a trust is the creating of a legal entity that you put your assets into, and then technically it's outside of your estate. Depends on the circumstance. It's a little bit more complex than that, but again, it's a 10,000 foot view. Trusts are mainly created so that you can put something in, somebody manages it a certain way that you direct. And that has a lot of legal consequences that might be appropriate for you or might be inappropriate for you depending on what you need. So generally speaking, revocable living trusts are frequently used in estate planning. I would say they're used much more frequently than irrevocable trusts. Revocable trusts are exactly that. The person who creates the trust, mostly you're going to put something in and you can disband that trust. You can take that stuff back out if you wanted. There's no problem. I liken it to creating a company where you create the company, put yourself a CEO, and then you put your assets inside the company and you start managing the company as you would normally. So there are some pros and cons. We've talked about revocable living trusts in other YouTube videos, but at the end of the day, revocable living trusts are great because you can create it, you can change it, you can do whatever you want with it during your lifetime, no problem. Now, generally speaking, when somebody passes away, that's when the revocable trust turns into an irrevocable trust and the rules are set. But during your lifetime, all is well. You can create it, put your assets into it, and do whatever you want. So you live life the normal way. And this is what I work with clients probably 80-90% of the time, which is I create a trust, I put their house in it, I put their bank accounts and all sorts of assets inside that trust, and they live their lives the exact same way, and they can just have a great legal protection. Trusts are great because they prevent the assets that are inside the trust from going through probate. And probate actually costs way more than setting up a trust, and it costs way more in time as well. And probate, for those who need a refresher, is the legal process by which you have to go before a judge and get your will validated, and it takes a long time and it costs a lot of money. And it freezes your assets for the meantime. So loved ones can't access the assets immediately, and your information is also public. So I can read anybody's will who died in anywhere, really. So revocable living trust and irrevocable trust, they avoid that whole process completely. It's amazing. So that's a conversation I have very frequently with clients, and it's an important one to have. But sometimes irrevocable trusts pop up. Now, irrevocable trusts are a little bit more specialized in the fact that it's irrevocable. Once you create it and you put your stuff in, you can't undo it. It's created, and the only people who can undo it are not you. So the whole point of an irrevocable trust is to let somebody else manage your assets entirely without your influence, which sounds kind of crazy, but there are some reasons to do it. The first reason would be to avoid the estate tax. Now, frequently, it's a strange concept, but essentially what you can do is create a trust, transfer any asset that would be subject to the estate tax into that trust, irrevocable trust, and then you can say, that's an irrevocable trust. I have no control over it. I have no influence, so therefore it's not part of my estate, and you can't tax me on it. And the government has to follow that. But a revocable trust, you technically have control over the asset because, again, you can undo the trust, you can change everything if you wanted to, you could completely bust it if you wanted. So a revocable trust is subject to estate tax, all the assets inside of it. An irrevocable trust, its assets are not subject to the estate tax. So that's important to know because you lose that control, but you get avoid taxes. So that's a pretty sweet gig. In addition to that, the irrevocable trust, you can put somebody in charge as the trustee. I liken it to the CEO. They have to do all the directions and they have to follow exactly what you say inside that trust. But you can also put a trust protector who can replace the CEO or the trustee if the trustee doesn't do exactly what you thought they should be doing. So there are some ways to create the irrevocable trust and have a lot of protection and to have at least some control over it. But at the end of the day, the estate tax is a really big reason why people create that. Another reason why people create irrevocable trusts is to put their assets inside of it and then claim it's not part of their estate. So if they're getting sued, they can, well, before you get sued, ideally you should do this, but if you are getting sued, an option is kind of to create an irrevocable trust in certain circumstances. Again, not legal advice, but just bear with me. Essentially, if it's an irrevocable trust and the assets inside, you can't claim it's a part of your estate, and so therefore if somebody's suing you, and you did this before the lawsuit, then you say, I don't own anything in that trust, therefore I can't give that to you if you win against me. So that's another reason why people do it. And the last reason is that irrevocable trusts are just generally good protection for assets that will appreciate in value. So a common strategy is to put life insurance policies inside an irrevocable trust, because as it grows in value, or if it makes your estate go over the estate tax limit, then that asset won't be a part of your estate, and again, you avoid taxes. So those are just some of the pros and cons of irrevocable trust versus revocable. Again, it's just kind of going back over a summary. A revocable trust, you have control, so that's good, and it technically avoids probate, so that's great as well. So does the irrevocable trust. But the cons are that your estate or your assets are part of your estate still, so you're subject to estate tax, and you're subject to providing that information about those assets if someone were to sue you, or if the government's looking for taxes or whatever. It's still part of your control, so you have to let people know if they're trying to come after you. Irrevocable trusts are the opposite, where you lose control, and there are ways to kind of mitigate that and make it a little bit better, but you lose a lot of control, and by losing the control, which is a con, you get the pros and the benefits of no estate tax from those assets, and you can avoid creditors and IRS and all those people claiming you need to list those assets as part of your estate. So that's, again, broadly speaking. There's so much more on this. I could go for hours. In fact, this video is already a little bit long, but it's a very complex topic, and sometimes they're appropriate to do an irrevocable trust. Other times it's appropriate to do revocable trust. But at the end of the day, you should definitely talk to an attorney to make sure you're making the right decision, because as soon as you pass away, it's permanent. It's a permanent decision, and it affects every single asset of your entire life. So an estate plan is extremely important, and that's why you should reach out to people like me. You can find me on legionlawpllc.com, or you can email me directly, Derek, D-E-R-E-K, at legionlawpllc.com. So thank you so much, and we'll see you guys on the next one.